So it's kind of funny doing it the opposite way. But then I know a bunch of people who figure out the organic game and they do it well. I think one of the best advice that I was given is ultimately figure out what's going to work for you. Take inputs from lots of different places until you figure out like your style. And it's the same thing with sports, but you can't play exactly like somebody else. You learn the fundamentals, and then once you start learning the fundamentals and you start kind of developing your own kind of playing style that makes you unique and gives you a slight edge because it's your game. What is going on, everyone? Welcome to Founder Fires, where entrepreneurs step into the heat, we face the challenges, and we forge our own path to success. Here, we're not just going to talk about business. We're going to talk about like real conversations, real struggles, real strategies, how resilience are being tested as a founder, and ultimately how founders are building businesses on their own terms. And the goal is to bring you battle-tested insights from founders who've been there, who've been through the fire, who are sharing their wins, lessons, and breakdowns, and how they're scaling or how they're pivoting or just how they're getting started. So pull up a seat and let's plan your next big move here. So with me, I've got a founder, Dan Bagniuk. Did I say your last name right? Bagniuk?
Bagniuk, close enough.
Say it one more time.
Bagniuk.
Bagniuk. That's gonna bother me. Where is it from?
Ukrainian.
Okay, Ukrainian. So it's Bagniuk.
Bagniuk. Yeah.
Bagniuk. Okay, Bagniuk. Is stumbled me up a little bit, but ultimately, Dan, you are the man that coaches, courses, creator, and consultants go to when they want a self-sustaining growth model that can ultimately generate extra profits to the bottom line, right? So you're really focused on finding hidden profit levers inside of a business and creating systems around consistently monetizing and capturing on those hidden opportunities, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So I've worked with a couple different businesses throughout time because my initial start was email marketing. And there's some businesses that were just running their operations in not the most healthy way. So they were just kind of grinding their way with ads. And with some, we did pretty well if their front end was really good. But they were just all burning themselves out. So that kind of helped me transition into building out. I kind of interchanged the two. There's a self-sustaining growth model where I now kind of more so lean towards like the AI growth operating system because it's similar things, just finding ways to allow yourself to actually build a business that you enjoy running without hating your life. So
ultimately building a business that serves you and your lifestyle and not require you to be a slave.
Exactly.
To the business.
Exactly.
So to kind of set the stage, man, what is a belief about business you had when you started that you now know is completely wrong?
There's multiple ways to go about this. At the time, I thought that business was like the ultimate sort of like key to creating like freedom, just living a lifestyle based business and just enjoying like sipping margaritas on the beach type thing, like working with your laptop on in a chair. I feel like before 2020, that's what kind of like everyone was kind of talking about or aspiring to be. And then you realize you actually do it, but it's like, they talk about how great the physical side of it is, but not the mental side is where it really gets like, sure, you could be sitting on the beach with your laptop working, but like, if you're doing that, nobody actually wants to be doing that. Like if you're doing that, that's a problem. So everyone sort of aspires for that when they're getting started, but if you've been in the
like
game,
the reality, the reality is if you're going on a vacation and you're an entrepreneur, you don't want to have your laptop on the beach.
Nope, exactly. So it's like when I was getting started, I was like, it just sounds amazing for me to like be able to just kick back on my couch, sit on my phone, do the work. But it's like, no, I just want to sit on my couch and not do work. Like that's the key. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's something that got shattered for me.
Okay. And if you had to describe kind of like your entrepreneur journey in one sentence, how would you describe it?
Trials and tribulations with big rewards at the end of it. That's just, I feel like that's so cliche, but it's just so true.
It's like the everyone's journey, and even as those guys who are hearing it, like if they're on that journey, they could probably relate.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Or yeah,
and did
another
you
way
have
I
any
would,
moments when you were starting out where you knew like you were actually built for this, like you can actually do this, um, and go the distance?
I had like a deep ingrained belief in me as a kid. So I grew up playing hockey. I always thought I was going to go play pro, like every kid with their favorite sport. So I had a deep ingrained belief in me that, like God was working in me, that I meant for something bigger. I'm not meant to just play small, do little things. And then the first business that I ran, I was a franchisee for like a student painting company, and I had no intention of ever getting into business. Like I wasn't even aware of it. I was a door-to-door marketer, and my two managers within the same week offered me to like start my own business. I was like, I guess they see something in me, so let me start. And it was like the hardest year of my life. This was back in like 2018, 2019. But by the end of it, it wasn't even about the money for me. It was just about like the accomplishment of getting to a certain revenue level just because we got a free trip paid for
Yeah.
us, like to go to a celebration. So yeah, when I actually went to that trip, that's when I kind of realized like, oh, and even like my business coach at the time, she wrote me a card. She's like, talk about how proud she was. But the thing that stood out and still sticks to me is like, whatever you put your mind to, I know that you achieve it. So I'm like, that's true. I do. So that's when I figured that I was like, oh, okay, this is my next path. Because pro hockey obviously didn't work out. I got injured.
Yeah.
So I was like, maybe this is the new path for me.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool, man. So in your journey as a entrepreneur and running an online business, what's been like the hardest moment in your business that made you almost quit?
There was two. The first one was when I was like just getting started. So this is when I transitioned from being a franchisee into the online space. And this is when COVID hit. So the entire space was kind of lighting up, and I bounced around so many different opportunities of like starting a white label agency. And then, eventually I became a closer, started working with this sales coach who I basically, long story short, paid money to work for. Like I was supposed to be a head coach at his agency. So I paid him, never got paid as a result. So I worked for free for 5 months. And when I left, that's when I shifted. I was like, I'm done with like sales. I'm just going to go into copywriting because it's the same thing. And it's more congruent to the life I wanted to live. But even then that sucked. Like I spent 4 months doing a bunch of free work, sending like 50 video DMs a day to people, trying to get like my first paying client. And I remember I like almost gave up when me and my now fiance, we went to Vancouver for like a vacation, like a week off. And I was working as a bartender at the time to just make money. And we drove around the campus, and I had dropped out of school the year before. So we drove around the university campus, and I started reconsidering. I was like, oh, okay, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I should just go back to school, become a software engineer. They pay well and whatever, just follow the pride. So I emailed the admissions office and everything. And I hit up one of my friends who was one of the guys that actually paid me for written copy. And I was like, hey, like, cause you're an you graduated from software engineering. What do I need to know? How do I prepare? And he's like, don't do it. Like, you're not the personality type for this. Like, I can tell you, just stick it out. Like, I know things must be tough, but I promise you, if you just stick it out, like things will work out. And they did.
Yeah.
So I thank God I listened to that guy.
A good friend.
Yeah, literally though, good friend. And then things really took off from there. But then the second point was actually last year in 2024. I don't know. I didn't get as close to giving up as possible, but it definitely like crossed my mind again, because back in May, I hit a record month. Like it was the most money I've ever made. It was the best sort of month, quote unquote, in business. And I was just chatting with a friend before I hopped on here. where my expectation of myself has grown so much over the years because I know what I'm capable of. So despite the fact that, I was making record money, like I was the most miserable I ever was that month. And mentally, like by the end of the month, I was just so tapped out, so drained, so exhausted of just like the ups and downs of like the emotional roller coaster. And I had no clue why. I was like, I should be happy right now, but I'm not. So that's when I was like, again, reconsider. I was like, am I even doing the right thing? Like, and I think that's a constant thing I'm also asking myself is, I'm always trying to make sure that I'm building the right thing and not spin my wheels building something I
I
hate.
mean, that's interesting because I was actually going to ask you, like, you've been able to achieve some success with your business. What's something that you're still struggling with? Is it getting acclimated to the level that you're at with business, and ultimately being content with where you're at so you don't feel like shit for not getting to the next level, and maintaining that balance of like, man, I'm really grateful for the stage that I'm at, but I'm hungry to continue to grow. What are the things that you still find yourself struggling with now?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate representation. Like, what's the saying? Be grateful for where you're at, but I forgot what it was. But basically, like, I'm really good at looking ahead and being ambitious and just knowing what I want, and having goals. Not so great at being like, oh, I've actually achieved a lot and I'm pretty proud of myself. So it's like always, I think that's the biggest thing is seeking more isn't necessarily a bad thing,
Yeah.
but it's a double-edged sword. And it's like a
Yeah.
very fine line of, I'm young, I don't have a family. So I think that's also part of it where at all costs, like I'm just doing whatever I can right now. I'm sure when a family comes along, it'll be easier to sort of reprioritize. Maybe you can attest to that.
You won't have a choice.
Yeah.
When them
So,
kids start coming along, man, it's interesting because I've never been more ambitious now as a father, right? And I was already pretty damn ambitious when I didn't have any kids and I was engaged and we're planning our wedding and things like that. I was already considering myself very ambitious. But once I looked my daughter in the face and she was just a baby in my hand, I was just like, man, I gotta kick things into high gear because we got another soul to raise and take care of and things like that. So now I'm thinking not just for our current situation, I'm thinking like 20, 30 years down the line when we got to pass things off to the little ones. You know what I mean?
yeah. Yeah. That's something I've been thinking about too. Hasn't hit me as hard. Obviously, I have not had a chance to look at my own kid in the face yet. But yeah, I think that's the balancing that because it's so easy to, again, you ride that fine line. It's so easy to be miserable, like a miserable entrepreneur, even though things are great because you're constantly focusing like what you don't have or like, your goals. So yeah, it's funny because I say that because it's between that and complacency because it's also very easy to get to a point where like you suffer so hard to achieve something. And when you get there, you're like, I just want to enjoy it. And then you like rest on your laurels almost too much. And then it's very hard to like pick back up. So it's a push and pull, but that's like the fun
Yeah,
part of what we do.
that's the dichotomy. And
Yeah,
it's the dichotomy to be managed, not necessarily to be solved for, right? Because
true.
you'll have seasons where you're pushing, seasons where you're kind of like coasting a little bit and planning out what the next move is going to be. And it's just taking it in strides.
Yep.
Early on, man, like what's probably one of like the worst advice that you followed? I mean, for me, I'll tell you right now, one of the worst advice that I followed early on in business when I was getting started was wait until you make X amount of money organically before you start running paid ads.
Uh,
Um,
uh-huh.
you know, or believing that there's only one right way to grow a business and acquire customers.
Yeah.
And getting stuck in just very, very linear thinking and just thinking like, oh, this is the only path that I can follow to get to where I want to be.
Yeah. The both of those actually like ring really true. Especially the first one you mentioned is very deep seated belief inside of me. Because even like it's so easy to think of that and just be like, oh, well, if I can't make money or whatever, sell this offer with a warm audience, like, who am I to sell it to a cold audience? But for me, I think nothing really comes to mind in terms of bad advice yet. I feel like I'm pretty good at being able to just learn and pivot. I think one of the things I wish I was told earlier on, this is something I learned again last year when I was in the depths of my own mind, is that you have to separate yourself and block out the noise as much as possible, because on your way up, you're leaning on so many people to try and like grow. But after a while, you develop a certain intuition level where you can solve your own problems. So for me, it got to a point where I was just throwing money at problems, thinking that I would solve it, when that wasn't the case. And I don't know how it came to me last year, but I just kind of made the realization. I was like, maybe instead of like listening to podcasts all day, or, reading business books like every night, or, investing in like multiple masterminds and coaches, like maybe I should just go for a walk and like in silence and just let my mind wander and let it run. Cause it's like, you look at all these greatest thinkers like Albert Einstein or Benjamin Franklin, they spent hours walking.
Yeah.
I told my fiance this, and it's funny, 'cause she's like, well, at the time they didn't really have much to do, so they were probably just bored. And I was like, true, but also like, it's a great way to just let your mind think, and let your mind just process the information. And I literally just got this advice again from a friend I was just talking to, where he's like, just take a week and just listen to yourself, like talk to God, listen to yourself. Don't read any books, don't consume any inputs, just see what comes. And that's like a constant reminder that I'm bringing up to myself, because it's easy to get overstimulated and overwhelmed by everyone telling you multiple different things, like you should wait to run ads, or, there's only one way to run a business, where it's like, what if the whole point of entrepreneurship is just to break rules? It's like, you listen to yourself, you're like, oh, I have this idea. What if I just run with it? And then maybe it'll work. Now you're trailblazing something new.
It's funny. I never built a business substantially organically. I tried to do the organic thing for a while, and then I was like, you know what? Screw this. I'm just gonna try and figure out this advertising thing.
Yeah.
And that's how I built every multiple seven-figure business. Is just like direct to cold traffic. Even if the offer isn't validated, even if if it's a completely unique vertical. And not until I've gotten really good with the ads have I been able to launch new offers purely organically and then scale them just organically through my network. So it's kind of funny doing it the opposite way. But then I know a bunch of people who figure out the organic game and they do it well. I think one of the best advice that I was given is ultimately figure out what's going to work for you, right? Take inputs from lots of different places until you figure out like your style. And it's the same thing with sports. You can't play exactly like somebody else, right? You learn the fundamentals. And then once you start learning the fundamentals and you start kind of developing your own kind of playing style that makes you unique and gives you a slight edge, because it's your game, And that's kind of like the advice for that kind of shifts gears for me, is like, oh, okay, right now I'm in this stage of business and I'm just learning the fundamentals. I'm just trying to figure out what the fundamentals are for me, And then once I know it, then it's like, okay, now I can start to analyze problems and analyze situations and actually make decisions and start to solve the problems. And as I'm making decisions and I'm solving problems, if it blows up in my face, like you do when you're watching film, you study like where you went wrong. You're like, oh, okay, I see what I did wrong there. All right, let me adjust and give it another go. And you just keep doing this process until things start to click,
Yep. No, that's a good one. Yeah. Reflections. I've never directly gotten this feedback. It's just something I've picked up from people, but reflecting and just journaling, like actually just taking the time to, again, this connects with my last point too, is looking back and seeing like what's worked, what hasn't. Like every time I would hear that, it's like, oh yeah, I know journaling is good. Like I know I should sit there and just think of like what's worked, but it's like genuinely taking the intentional time to even just write things down. You'll notice patterns over time. And because like you said, like best personal development game there is entrepreneurship. So the only way you do it is through basically like, yeah, game tape, but it's like, how are you actually keeping that record? Like if it's all in your mind, then probably not going to grow as fast.
You got to
So if you
write
just
things
document
down,
it,
or you got to document what's going on,
yep,
and have a way to be able to
exactly.
kind of revisit those moments, evaluate and see what's worked and what hasn't.
Yep.
So, kind of transitioning into scaling and, leadership and building team. For you, what's been the most effective way that you've acquired customers for your business? And what's the most effective way that you've seen work for your clients that you work with?
Yeah. I'll touch on my clients because that's going to be probably most relevant for people that are, because, if I'm a marketing agent, it's going to be a bit of a different approach. Acquiring customers, I think, I don't know, this might kind of put us a little bit off track. I feel like people don't always have a problem with acquisition per se. At least a lot of the business owners that I've worked with who, if you are already in like the 6-figure, 7-figure, even 8-figure range, like I think everyone's conditioned to be like, I just need more clients. I just need more leads. I think it gets to a point, and again, me being like an email marketer for a lot of these businesses, I've seen this firsthand where they are this on hamster wheel trying to chase the next client. So they're like spending all this money on ads, on acquisition and then they're burning most of it because only a few people will actually convert from that. But it's like, okay, like there's the whole 97-3 rule where it's like, 3% of people are going to buy right now, but 97% of them won't. So it's like, okay, what are you doing with the 97%? Because that's where the money's at, not the initial 3%. So I think that's what I was able to help with a lot with clients is like the acquisition, like, again, going back to your point, like anything works. You just got to find what works for you. Low ticket funnels work, direct DSL to call funnels work, name whatever, school
Like
communities,
there's
like,
so many ways to acquire customers, and they all
exactly.
work.
Yep.
Either, and I've learned this on my own, right? Looking back, and even like the coaches that were teaching organic strategies to acquire customers, those strategies worked because there are people who were making a bunch of money doing it. I just couldn't figure out how to make it work for me and my style, right? And it was just too repetitive for me to really wrap my mind mentally around it. So there was a mental block that upon evaluating and reflecting on my earlier stages as an entrepreneur, I was like, I see why it didn't work for me then. Like I just couldn't bring myself to really put in the effort needed to get over the hump, right? And so it's like when you start reflecting on those, like every single acquisition method of acquiring customers work. Just a
Mhm.
matter of like, do you believe it worked for you? Because if you don't believe it's going to work for you, it's just not going to work, right? And then two, are you willing to put in the effort needed to learn that acquisition method and to learn that process and actually make it work? And then, or do you have the skills to execute, right? So those are kind of like the three things that I identified even for myself when I was looking back. I was like, I didn't believe it was going to work, right? Just because I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I was too lazy to to put in that kind of effort. I did it for a few weeks and actually ended up getting a client, but it was so much effort to get that one client. I was like, F this is for the birds. I'm not willing to
Yeah.
spend the rest of my time doing this. And then
Yep.
so number two, because I didn't really believe it would work for me long term, I wasn't willing to put in the effort to really learn and master it. Because I was willing to put in effort to learn and master it, I lacked skill in executing at a proficient enough level to get the outcome that I wanted.
Mhm.
Right. So any method of acquiring customers really works. It's a matter of finding what's going to work for you. So what you're saying is like you're coming into the fold with a business when they've already got a method of acquiring customers that's working to some degree, but there's a lot of bloat, there's a lot of leakage, there's a lot of wastage, right? All their efforts is spent on the 3% who are ready to buy, who recognize they're in a burning house. And then the other 97% of their database are just neglecting because they're not ready to buy it. Those people need to be courted. You need to wine and dine them a little bit, add value, build build a
Exactly. Yep.
relationship, and then they're gonna want to do business with you. And they're like, nah, I'm just not willing to do that.
Yep. Basically. Yeah. So, I mean, like we still help with the acquisition side of things because again, the space is like the coaching space has changed pretty aggressively, in my opinion, over the last few months. I don't know what it's been. I feel like people are just so much more jaded and skeptical. I feel like the space is also, I've seen a couple of people talk about this, has gotten more lonely, I think, because people are starting to get like so aggressive with their marketing. Like the amount of times I'll scroll my feed and it's like, what makes me vomit is the classic, like crazy claim, like whatever, we'll book you 30 appointments or we'll generate X amount of dollars in your business or you don't pay. And it's like, so old, like these crazy guarantees, like people have taken Hormozi's book and just like put it at an extreme level on it.
Yeah.
So that's why we also like kind of still come in and help with the acquisition side. But typically, yeah, for the most businesses, like they're already established. They already got a method of like some authority coming in.
Yeah.
So it's easier to go from there. But yeah, like you said, there's so much leakage and slippage that we help solve for that. Like whether it's with the setting process or whether it's during the sales process, or even just like most times it is just the nurture process. Like one of our clients, big name, like very notable name, they were primarily operating off of just paid traffic. And they had like a massive list that was just completely untapped. And this was back like during my email marketing days, but they brought me in and I was like, okay, you guys are like doing well, but you could be doing better. So they had a list of 500,000 people that were basically dead. Like they just have never been talked to ever. It's just people that have either bought their book or maybe have like interacted with the community, just never like ever nurtured in any sort of way. So we shaved that down to about like 200,000 people. And we're like breaking up into chunks at the time because with, not to get into the compliance side of things, but just so we didn't get like blocked and spammed. And basically like within 5 days of just like mailing a tiny chunk of their list, like we were able to pull in like 65K in revenue, something like that. And then over the course of basically a year, that turned into like $2.1 million in extra revenue that they just generated. And this is what I mean is like, most businesses don't know that they're sitting on this kind of cash and spending all this money on ads, converting a small percentage of people. And that's why it's like a hamster wheel. That's why it's a race to like the bottom, burning out. It's like when you actually tap into other sources and actually spend the time, like you said, whining and dining, that's when you're basically making, like you're getting a better return on your ad spend at that point. So.
And it's the ability to kind of like lengthen that sales cycle, right?
Exactly.
If I know over the course of a year, somebody that I spent maybe a couple $1,000 to get on my list will turn into like 18,000 in revenue for my business. And it's like, all right, great. I don't need the ads to work within the first 7 days. I can actually afford to have a more longer time horizon on these campaigns and focus on building trust, building my reputation, adding value to the marketplace, because I know they're going to be entering this machine that's going to be building and nurturing them on the background and developing my own buyers, which is pretty cool. So we're getting near towards the end of our time together. So I want to do a few rapid fires and then give the people kind of like an opportunity to hear exactly what you and your team specialize in. I know you kind of briefly mentioned it, but for those who are listening and I think that are at the point where they've got some acquisition working and they've got a decent list size, I want to give you an opportunity to just kind of share what you can do exactly for them. So rapid fire, what's the first book that comes to mind that you would recommend any entrepreneur to read?
10x is easier than 2x.
All right. And then what's the worst piece of business advice you've seen preached in the marketplace?
Compete on claims and guarantees.
Compete on claims and guarantees. Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah.
And then what's like what's your unfiltered take on like the kind of like the hustle culture that we're seeing in the online space or in the digital marketing space?
To each their own. I think if you're stuck deep in the hustle culture, you got nothing else going on in your life that's like worthwhile focusing. So it's like, it's either that or, you know, you're playing a losing game, trying to fill a void inside with like money or status or fame, whatever, instead of just focusing on areas like we talked about.
Yeah.
Business is there to feed your life, not the other way around.
Yep. Some people are so poor, all they have is money, right?
Yeah.
And some people are so poor, all they have is work.
Yep.
They've
True.
got nothing else going for them in their life.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you like, if you had like 30 seconds to give, just a message to somebody who's looking to get started, in business, you know, what would it be? What would it be kind of like the core message that you give to like a new entrepreneur?
Take it one step at a time and solve the most immediate problem rather than trying to solve everything at once. And then just follow the ladder up. Solve the next problem after that, and then the problem after that, but just one at a time.
Focus on solving one problem at a time. I like that. And then lastly, so I know you've been able to build a pretty successful business, but what exactly does your business do, and how does it help those who are listening if they'd be a good fit?
Yeah. So in short, we basically help automate and scale businesses. That allows you to basically buy back your time and energy. So you can actually, again, build a business you enjoy running without sacrificing your life for it. So that's in short what we do. But to go deeper on that, it's basically like we have this whole like 5-pillar system on how we do that. So it's a front to back solution on actually taking someone cold and then basically turning them into a client. And we use AI, we use everything that we know about marketing. And we just basically aim for long-term sustainable scale rather than competing on claims and guarantees, something that's just going to burn out in a couple months.
Now, to kind of close this out, so for those of you guys who are listening, if you're spending a bunch of money on cold traffic acquisition, or you're spending a bunch of effort on organic acquisition, whatever it is, and you kind of want to be able to bolt on an evergreen process of turning those leads that you already either worked really hard to generate, or you spent your hard-earned money to generate. You have a mechanism of turning those leads, building a relationship with them, converting them, and capturing the revenue on the back end. Then I definitely recommend going to hiddenprofits.io and having a conversation and just booking a call, having them, Dan and the team, look at your process and see if there's any hidden profits to be captured. And if there is, I'm sure he'd be more than happy to take you on as a client. Now, to close this out, I want you to think about a quote that is kind of like struck home close to home for you recently. And then so while you're thinking about the quote, I want you to answer this question. For those who are listening, right, what's one thing, like if you've seen it, that you may have seen time after time again with the clients that you work with that struggle the most versus the ones that are crushing it, or the companies that you've seen that are crushing it, entrepreneurs that are doing really well? Like, what's one thing you see in entrepreneurs, do that gives you a strong sign that they're probably not going to make it, like their business may not be successful?
If you just show me their front end ads, I'll probably be able to tell, but it's exactly that. It's the old way of running marketing where you're all in on top of funnel or just client acquisition. And that is literally like all your life and business revolves around. So if that's you, then you'll get to a certain point, but eventually you'll backslide. So
Yeah.
that's probably
essentially having a very transactional acquisition system where it's just like,
exactly.
Either you buy or you're dead to me.
Yep.
All right.
100%. Yep.
Awesome. And then what's like the most recent quote that you can think of that's really had the most impact on you, or something that you've been kind of finding yourself coming back to, reflecting on, and maybe it gets better as you think about it, the more you think about it?
I've been pretty deep into the Bible recently. There's two that come up. One of them is Galatians 6:9. So it's like something along the lines of, don't get tired of doing what is good. You'll reap a harvest, or you'll reap a harvest of blessing at the right time. So that one's been very encouraging. But the other one in general, I really like Psalm 23:5. And it's basically the whole concept that God prepares a table for you amidst your enemies, and he anoints your head with oil and your cup overflows. And it's like, people, some are like, why is it amidst the enemies? But it's like, that's the point, is he leads you through things, not around it, he's not there to help like protect you from certain things, that you're meant to go through some of these things so you can train your hands for war.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I think that's awesome. For me, I think, if you can be a faith-based entrepreneur, and it's the ultimate hack, being able to pray about situations, pray through situations, study scriptures about different situations. Like, it's something just recently happened where I had to like seriously sit down and really pray and think very carefully through this situation. And you get God as a counsel, as the ultimate business advisor you can possibly get. It's such a hack. I'll go to sleep, I'll pray about a problem and think about it, and I'll wake up and the solution just hits me like a stack of bricks. It's like the ultimate hack. Or I'll be thinking about something and I'll be reading in the scriptures and then find the solution to the thing that I'm trying to solve for. I'm like, oh man, there it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. So,
100%.
man, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on here. I'm excited to see what you're doing in business. And for those of you guys who are listening, like, if you want to find kind of those hidden profits inside of your business, and you want a sustainable way of acquiring customers that is not just transactional, I think you should seriously consider checking them out and going to see what they're up to and how they could possibly help. And overall, man, thanks for being here, sharing your story, sharing some insights, some of the challenges and struggles. I think these are the types of conversations that I want to see more of and learn more about when it comes to entrepreneurs. Like, I want to get real. And I found that the more people can be real about what they're doing, the easier it is to want to do business with them, because too many people are out there just faking, trying to perpetuate that laptop entrepreneurial lifestyle, where like, that's not really it. Like, it's hard. Sure. You got to work hard. It can be lonely. There can be challenges. You're going to be staring into the abyss. But only those who are willing to persevere are going to reap the reward.
Sure that. Yeah. And one last note for anyone that is searching me up: if you do Google Hidden Profits.io, you're going to probably get led to my like old funnel. So if you just want to get in contact with me, just search me up on Facebook, Instagram, or you can find me on YouTube. Just search up my name, Dan Bagniuk. So yeah, but I appreciate it.
Send me the links to your socials, and I'll include it in the show notes and things like that. But
sounds good.
Guys, for those who are listening, what I want to know is, I like to do this thing internally within our teams, is I challenge whoever listens to any one of the sessions or anything like that, comment a 6-word update, right? And 6 words or less. Summarize your takeaways from this episode or the show, what you learned, and then share your case in point. So what is your 6-word update? 6 words or less. Comment below, and then explain why that is relevant to you, right? So, and the reason for that is it forces you to recall the most relevant parts of any lessons that stuck out to you, and it allows your brain to be able to recall it and use it and identify it when you're facing a situation where it could be relevant. So that's the takeaway for those of you guys who are listening. And if you want to find out more about Dan, all his socials and stuff will be in the show notes. Till next time, stay calm, change lives, and have business on your terms.